Hi everyone, Angela Guanzini here with E4D University, and welcome to this week's Chairside Chat, Design Gone Wild. Set and use design tools to achieve the customized results you want. So this week is kind of a hodgepodge of topics, we'll say. I've pre-scanned in a case, or was about to, and it was kind of funny. I turned my card on and I noticed a circle on my screen. Now, we all know that we generally see a square. And so I thought, aha, this is a great thing to start talking about. So when that circle was up on the screen, what happened is my cart got switched into SD mode. And I'm running an HD wand. So I go to my home screen, click on settings, and scroll all the way to the right. And there on the settings tab, it says change camera configuration to HD. And I said, yes, I definitely want to be scanning in HD if I have HD compatibility. So hopefully you know if you've upgraded, or dependent upon when you purchased your system, if you're using an SD wand versus an HD wand. And now you know if you've got a circle when you're scanning, it's SD. If you have a square when you're scanning, that's HD mode. And there is a different scan speed between the two. So when you're scanning in SD mode, your numbers on the scan speed are going to be higher because it's not as fast. Whereas in HD mode, you can see now on the screen, it even says HD, which means I have HD compatibility. My settings for my speed are going to be actually lower, so my number is going to be lower. So I'm going to go up into the settings tab and just double check 33. So that's my scan speed. So if you didn't know that you could adjust your scan speed in the scan tab, please go up into the settings. Generally 25 is a good number to start at, and then you can move from 25 to 30, or up and down in increments of 5. So I'm going to go ahead and scan in tooth number 30 here. Now, just wanted to talk about the scan pattern again, might as well since we're here. What I want you to notice on the right-hand side is that I stop moving and then I glance to the left. When I glance to the left and the blue shows up, in my mind, that's my green light to go. So I move, I stop, I look to the left, the blue shows up. What I'm doing right now is I'm kind of figuring, since I'm plugging along, you'll notice when I rotate to the buckle, I'm actually going to take a few extra scans to clean up my interproximal data. So coming across the occlusal, now I'm going to start my buckle rotations, or which I should say my left rotations, counterclockwise. We always take a cusp tip shot, a middle of the tooth shot, and then that gingival margin shot. Interproximal stop. Now here's where I'm going to go in and take that interproximal shot because I was right there. I'm also going to scan the preparation at the gingival margin. So there's a difference when you're scanning. When you scan at the margin versus down at it, you get a much more crisp view. Here, the interproximal, I'm going to capture that as I'm coming across. So after I finish up scanning, before I actually turn my wand off, I'm going to evaluate the data on the left-hand side and rotate it. What I'm looking for are any black gaping holes, like that one. If I saw that in my interproximal area, that would be indicating I'm missing data. And I don't have any of those. That way I know now when I get to my screen and I click on highlight low data areas, I'm not going to be missing any interproximal data because there were no black gaping holes in the other view. So now I'm ready to do the normal steps of trimming my model. And we're only trimming our model from the buccal view. That's really the only important area to trim. The mesial, the distal, the lingual, not so important. Our data sets align based on that buccal data, so I need to ensure I have all three models trimmed from the buccal view. Or trimmed from the occlusal view, but trim the buccal. I have 100% of my gingival contour, 100% of my occlusal data, and I'm missing the lingual, which is fine on the opposing. Now, 100% of all 6 teeth, 3 prep, 3 opposing, 2 to 3 millimeters beyond that gingival contour. I need all of that data to align the 3 data sets. So now that we've captured all of our data, head into the margin tab. And this time, when we're setting our orientation, remember that we're focusing in on the mesial and distal neighbor. Okay, so the mesial and distal neighbor is what we're focusing on. We want to pretend we're standing on top of the preparation, and we are just either moving our mouse up or down. And what we're doing is we are leveling out the occlusal plane. So here, what we're doing is we are aligning our cusp tips. So that's step one. And then the second thing that we're doing is we are going to make sure that our cusp tips are the same height. Okay, so same cusp height in alignment. Now we're going to mark the margin. Marking the margin using paint. Now paint we usually don't use, but I did want to demonstrate it. 99% of our users use trace 99% of the time. Paint and lasso are for 100% super gingival preparations only. So 100% super gingival preparations, which this is. So when I use paint, I left click, hold, and circle and drag around the exterior of the enamel margin. And it's okay if it looks messy. But what's going to happen is it's going to give me a proposal. And then I'm going to go around and evaluate. Now you can see here on my mesial side, I kind of fell low. And I fell below the height of contour. So I'm going to go into selection area and isolate my preparation. I'm going to isolate the preparation so that I can see that interproximal margin better. Now when I'm doing the selection area, I want the whole tooth green. So the whole tooth and nothing but the tooth should be green. If I got some in the interproximal, please use remove from selection area to clean that up. Now we're back to our margin tab, and now I can isolate my prep. Now if those banners get into your way, please click on the white tooth in the lower right hand corner, and now zoom in and use your add segments to go ahead and clean that margin up and rotate it around all the way around. Looks like we're a little bit jagged here. I'm going to straighten that out with add segments as well. So when I'm drawing the margin from the height of contour, I'm trying to draw the margin in the middle of the green line. That's what I'm aiming for. Now after I do that, I'm going to turn off my show features and I'm going to evaluate it from the occlusal view. What I'm looking for are little areas of stone that are sticking out beyond the blue line, meaning I have exposed enamel. I do not want my doctor to have to taper back the enamel to meet the porcelain. So I'm just going to bring that out to the edge slightly. You saw that I adjusted my area of influence because I'm just moving small segments of my margin. Very small segments. So using your area of influence can help you. You don't want to make it too small or you'll be moving one dot at a time. So now I can see the margin looks good. And now verify. Always, always, always verify. Rotate it around and look at it from that height of contour. Does this make sense? And it does. It looks really good. So you have to look at it from the occlusal view. Make sure that stone's not sticking out beyond, just like there. But then again, rotate it from that buccal and lingual view to ensure that you have not fallen below the height of contour, and just to make sure it makes sense. So lots and lots of rotating when you're marking your margin. After we're done marking our margin, then it's going to be time for us to go to align our buccal bite data. When you're aligning your buccal bite data, please grab exact gingival contour to exact gingival contour. That's how you're going to get the best alignment. So always know where you're going first. Grab exact data, drag it to exact data, and drop. The reason I know I got a really good alignment is because every single tooth is speckled. Every single tooth is speckled. I do not have one solid blue or one solid stone, but everything is speckled. There's one more thing I wanted to show you in the margin tab, toggle. Toggle, toggle, toggle. I use it all the time. When you use toggle, it really helps kind of make your eye get drawn to areas of stone that might be sticking out beyond the edge of that blue line. Now that one right there, we were splitting hairs, but I did want to show you that it does kind of make your eye pop to it a little bit easier. And now the green tooth. We just talked about this last week. So resize it, reposition it, and reapply it. So Alt tab and the up or down arrow to make it bigger or smaller, and then place it into a good starting position. Remember, if you don't have a good starting position for this green tooth, you're going to have a lot more design work to do. So then we're going to go ahead and press apply. After we press the apply button, we're going to watch the tooth morph, and then we're going to get into the design gone wild. So what I did with this case is I purposely over-articulated the case with this model because I know it happens where we run out of real estate, we just can't get enough reduction, we might get a really bad proposal on our occlusal table or material thickness issues, and that's what I want to talk about. I also want to talk about, take a look at that occlusal groove. It's not aligned, right? So using your big incremental change tools for tooth positioning. Now look at how nice and aligned that occlusal groove is. I'm also then going to rotate in incremental change tools and look and see how does everything line up. You must rotate. Look at it down that distal view. How do the cusps align? How does everything look? Well, when I'm looking at the model here, I can see barely on the screen. It keeps zooming in on me, but I can see that my marginal ridge is really, really high. And so what I'm going to do is use my incremental change tools to twist it, and not necessarily even twist this time, as I tilted it towards that mesial tooth. So I tilted it towards the mesial tooth, and now my distal looks a little open, so I'm going to bump the distal out. Make your big adjustments to tooth positioning while in incremental change tools, because now we've got a good position. The next step is to use our freeform change tools to make small adjustments to contour. So think now I'm just going to kind of wax it up. So I've got a material thickness issue there, but plus my buccal wall is flat. Autogenesis does not take into account our axial wall contour. So notice when I'm using the rubber tooth, I start at that incisal edge and work my way down. I also rotate, starting at the distal and then moving and rotating it from the mesial, so that I can really take a look at my mesial and distal neighbors and use their contour to help me design this restoration. So I can see that I'm following the contour. Again, we're flat on the lingual, so use your mesial neighbor and match that contour, and then do the same thing with your distal. Our material thickness was fine on the wall. I can see at the margin it's not so good, but that's the last thing we take care of. I'm not going to worry about that now. And I want to make sure you know, and I'm just going to preface this, when I'm designing this case today, this is not for proficiency. Okay, I promise you. I'm going to be playing with a lot of design tools. So there I was moving my margin using rubber tooth. Instead, now I'm going to be using my freeform change, or excuse me, my move feature. So I just used move feature to bring that marginal ridge down. I brought it down a little too low. And now I just bumped it up so it's nice and even. Now, going to take care of the other. I'm going to use slice plane too. So let's use slice plane. Position the slice plane by left clicking and holding onto that edge and then releasing. And now watch how easy it is to adjust your marginal ridge when you can watch it mathematically and line it up by squares or by the line. I can see they're exactly the same height. After I've got my marginal ridges done, same method to madness, I'm going to take care of my, embrasures. So I'm going to take care of my embrasures now and turn move feature off. So remember, I was using those incremental arrows in the center there to activate move feature. Now adjusting your embrasures. So embrasures, those triangles, they must match. Okay, I want a nice matching triangular embrasures to create a nice broad contact. Here, they do not match. So I need to pull that embrasure over to broaden the contact and to make the triangles more similarly match. So that's going to be much more friendly, a much more friendly contact. Hygienists are going to be much more happy with that. Look at the contour on the buccal view and take a look from all views when you're designing a tooth. You have to rotate to make sure everything makes sense and everything looks like a tooth. So now that I've made those small adjustments to contour, and I've looked at my cusp alignments, and I've looked at my marginal ridges and my embrasures, now I'm ready to start checking function. So this is where our design's gone wild. Look how high this tooth is. Once we click on view contacts, that's really high. So I told you I over-articulated it. Let's say you didn't have enough reduction. So this is going to be really high. What are we going to do? Well, here I'm going to show you I can use move feature, and I'm going to bump down that entire occlusal table until I can no longer see that high spot. I'm going to do the same thing on the cusp tips as well as on the marginal ridge. So I'm going to get it into function, right, so that my patient can now close. Turn off move features, and now I can see much more friendly contact areas. Go to your contact refinement and make your little circle. And now it's adjusted that area by 80 microns, that area, this area. So it's been adjusted, but now do I see stones sticking through there? Aha, yes I do, which is exactly what I wanted to happen because I wanted to talk about this. Remember, I'm not trying to be proficient here. I'm just trying to teach you different ways to deal with issues that might arise. So now my occlusion's good, but what's not good? Let's see. As I look at this, I've got some space, right? So I can try to make up for that. But what I have is a hole in my restoration, meaning my material thickness is not there, but my occlusion was good, meaning I've got an issue. So at the end of the day, what trumps function is material thickness. So at this point, I would have to decide, do I need to reduce more or am I going to adjust the opposing? So we're going to have to leave this restoration high. Now I'm using Move Feature and I'm using Rubber Tooth. I just want you to see different options that you have to aid in your design. So I've got the bite on, I've used Slice Plane, and now I'm using Rubber Tooth to really zone in on that area where I'm trying to increase the material's thickness but not trying to come into contact with my bite. So adjusting the slice plane to different areas of the restoration so that I can increase that material thickness without coming into contact with the opposing dentition. So having your bite on and using it in correlation with your slice plane, you can see is very helpful. I mean, my material thickness needs some serious help here. I've got red in my occlusal table, which means that if I was to mill it out that way, the system's going to patch it, meaning it's going to put a patch of porcelain and it's going to look just like a lake of porcelain instead of occlusal anatomy. But the system knows that it needs a certain thickness to make it through a patient's flexural strength, through their bite. So jumping back and forth between Move Feature, now you can see, well, now I'm high again, but look at my material thickness. And material thickness wins. Material thickness trumps function. But I'm just going to go back and play around a little bit more to show you. Okay, I'm going to bring up my material thickness there using Rubber Tooth, and then I'm going to pull my material thickness down in another area. This time, though, I'm going to go back and I'm going to use the contact refinement. Now, contact refinement can be custom. So in my practice, our numbers were a little bit different. Everybody knows your colors, right? You know what colors you want on the occlusal table, so you have little to no adjustment. If you don't, that's what we're going to talk about today. So I knew in my practice that white, brown, and black still meant that my doctor had to make too many occlusal adjustments. In my practice, I could only have black on the occlusal table. If I had any white, that meant that my doctor was going to have to make some adjustments, and he didn't want to make any adjustments. So what I was going to do, or what I'm going to show you here, is how to adjust to a different strength. So negative 80 microns is where the system's defaulted to. In my practice, we found at negative 115, when I took it to negative 115 microns, that my doctor had little to no adjustments. Okay, and that's what he was looking for. And if I still had a little bit of white in that area, there's another tool that I would use to really customize that. But that strength now, that negative 115 microns, if I knew that that's what worked in my practice, I can go up into the settings icon in the upper right-hand corner and I can set that as my default so that every single time I come into contact refinement, my default strength for occlusal contacts would be negative 115, so I didn't have to change it every time. All right, so we're going back in and, again, design gone wild, right? We're going to play back and forth with this to try to get it into as close of occlusion as we can, keeping our material thickness, knowing that we are going to have to make some occlusal adjustments. Adjusting your area of influence with Rubber Tooth is very helpful. Now, what you're doing is you're watching me pull the restoration down so that it's into better occlusion, but then also pulling the occlusal table up to get it back into material thickness. So we could go back and forth on this for quite some time. As you can see now, it's high again. So utilizing slice plane. And now dropper. How many of you have used dropper in the negative? Look at the number. Now the number that got cut off at the top of the screen is actually negative 0.03-ish. Okay, negative 0.03-ish is what I dropped it down to. So dropper can be used in the negative, meaning instead of waxing on and using dropper as an adding material, it's removing it. And it removes a very, very little amount. It's a really great way for you to be able to customize your occlusal contacts as well as your interproximal contacts. So enough playing around with the occlusal table. Next, what we want to look at is our interproximal contacts. And how can we customize those settings? So interproximal contacts can also be customized just like your occlusal contacts, right? So your occlusal contacts can also be set to a default. So interproximal contacts here, what we can do is set that as a default. So right now it's set at 100 microns. There's no way we're going to see the restoration at 100 microns. So what we need to do is figure out what our colors mean and what they are in our practice, and then pick a number. Generally, interproximal contacts are set at anywhere between 35 and 50 microns. 35 to 50 microns gives us that nice royal blue with a hint of light blue, which is exactly what we like. Now, why on earth wouldn't we always do our contacts this way? It was so easy. I don't have to use smooth surface. It's just set exactly the way I want it. Well, there's a thing. When you're using the interproximal contact refinement, look at my embrasures now. Look what's happened. See, when I undo it, aha, those are the embrasures I'm looking for. So automatic contact refinement for the interproximal, what it does is it affects my embrasures. So me personally, I don't care to use this tool, but you can. And now what I'm doing is I'm broadening the restoration distally. And I want you to see, this is another reason I don't use this particular tool, is because look how boxy it looks. As I was broadening it to the distal, it kind of turned boxy. So that's why I prefer to use my rubber tooth, because that way I can create those nice custom contours and embrasures that I'm looking for. Now when I'm looking at this contact, it was a little bit too much of a point contact, and so I'm using dropper, putting the tip of the orange at the edge of that black line. Look at how I'm able to broaden that contact. Now the contact is too strong, right? It's got that green in there, which means that's going to be too strong, but look at my embrasures. So I'm just going to lighten the contact using the smooth surface. Okay, I increased my intensity level, and now I'm going to use my negative dropper in that negative 0.03-ish, and then making it the same area of influence as my contact that I'm trying to adjust. And now that's a perfect contact in my practice. Now on the other side, my contact is actually open. Okay, there was no light blue over there. So this restoration isn't going to be pretty, right? We've already established that. I'm playing around with this restoration a lot just to show you different ways to utilize tools. So when you're using dropper, using it just like you're waxing the tooth up. Remember, we need a yellow ring around the margin. So little hints of orange here and there are totally normal. That is not normal. If I saw red, the first thing I'm going to do is double check my move margin. I click on move margin to make it a ghost tooth so that I can see, did I draw my margin correctly? And I did. So I just have a material thickness issue there. What I could do so that I don't have to deal with this issue is I could increase my margin boost. So you have the ability that every single time a restoration is made, the system will automatically place a certain amount of porcelain at the edge of that margin. Okay, now that's up to you. I personally like to use my dropper tool. I just like to drop her around. I just drop her a ring around the margin. And what I'm looking for is to get rid of that bright red, because I know if I was to mill that out, that it would come out with a more jagged margin, and that's not what I'm looking for. I need a yellow ring around the margin. And then I can go and use my smooth surface to kind of just smooth out those areas so I have a nice transition at the edge of my margin where the porcelain and the enamel meet. Okay, so that was using dropper and smooth, using negative dropper. And how about the ruler? What is that for? Well, when I click on the ruler and then I left click on areas, it tells me the thickness of that material. Well, we all know that I don't want 0.5 millimeters, right? I'd like to see more 1.5 to 2 millimeters of material thickness on that occlusal table. So in that area, I would have a couple options again to go back, use my slice plane, and see where that area is where I'm having material thickness issues. So I use slice plane quite a bit, as you can see. And now I've exposed that yellow occlusal groove, adjust my area of influence, and just pull that little area up. I already know that this restoration is going to be high. We know this. I over-articulated it purposely. But you can see how when you don't properly capture a bite registration, or you don't properly prep to adequate reduction, what a nightmare really design can turn into, because you have to go back and forth so many times. There's definitely nothing proficient about what I've just done today. But hopefully what I've done is kind of opened your eyes to different ways to utilize tools. So how many of you have used negative dropper? And I can't tell you enough, negative dropper must be used carefully. You want to use it in that negative 0.03-ish from an intensity level when you drop it down. The gingival, sorry, we're talking here about the slice plane. Look at the slice plane. Using it from the gingival perspective, how that allows you to close up those food traps. This is also great when you're doing implants to really try to capture a nice emergence profile. But you need to be a little leery that when you're doing that, double check from different views, because now here you can see I've overextended it. So lots of rotating and using that slice plane to help create embrasures and contours that you want. Using the undo feature. So if you did something you didn't like, undo it. If you decided you liked it, click redo. So here I've just opened up my contact, so I'm using dropper to add back in a contact. Negative 0.03-ish, change the area of influence. How about using negative dropper on the occlusal table to enhance that occlusal anatomy? So negative dropper can be used in various ways. I used it to enhance my occlusal anatomy as well as to customize my occlusal contacts and my interproximal contacts. Now when we get into the mill tab here, remember this, I did not make this restoration pretty, functional, or anything. We just went over tools, and we know it. We can get into the mill tab and we see all of that yellow. That's not a good sign. That means we have material thickness issues, but the sprue placement is good. It's away from the margin, away from an interproximal contact. My design right there is undesirable. I definitely want to go back in and use my rubber tooth and dropper to help expand that lingual wall. So before you mill something out, look at the tooth. Make sure it looks like a tooth from all angles. Make sure it fits in its space, and that you've looked at it. If you get to that screen, to the mill screen, and you look at it from all different views, and you notice that you've missed something in the design, go back. Go back and just make that slight adjustment. So, Business of Dentistry Conference. We talked about this last week. I know I went over a lot of stuff today and, used tools in different ways. It was Design Gone Wild. It was a wild Chairside chat this week, and that kind of brings us to a wild time in Vegas, right? So the Business of Dentistry Conference, August 8th through the 10th at the Aria Resort and Casino. Please visit www.businessofdentistry.com/E4D. I would love to see you there. I'll be over at LVI, Las Vegas Institute, working with Nevo, so you're welcome to come over there and do hands-on live Nevo scanning, or come see us at the Aria and join a course or two. So there are going to be several clinicians there, key opinion leaders in CAD/CAM. It's the Dentrix Conference. Great conference, great hotel. Come and see us. And as always, I appreciate your time and thank you for watching. I want to hear from you. I'm in the midst right now of working with someone to do an interview from that office in Kentucky. So I've got the interview questions out. If you'd like to be interviewed, if you'd like to share your story, your success story with others, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please give me a call, 972-234-3880, and ask for Angela Guanzini in the Education Department. Or you can always email education@d4dtech.com. Have a wonderful day and happy scanning.